Hey, it's Guy Raz here, and welcome to The Great Creators. This is where I have conversations with some of the most accomplished artists, musicians, and performers of our time. And on the show today, singer-songwriter and country music star, Miranda Lambert.
It's kind of like my only chance to tell my real story is through the songs.
Miranda Lambert has won more Academy of Country Music Awards than any other artist in history. She's a proud Texan who got her start performing at local bars in East Texas. At age 19, she placed third on a national competition called Nashville Star, which led to a 20-year recording contract with Sony Music. Now, Miranda's on a brand new label with a brand new album called Postcards from Texas. So without further delay, here's my conversation with country star Miranda Lambert. You grew up in a pretty small place, Lindale, Texas, and mom, dad, brother, and a very functional family. Like, you had a very close relationship with your mom and dad growing up.
I had a really great relationship with them, and I still do. I had like one of those small town East Texas childhoods, like Friday night football, Sunday morning church. Like, I really had that kind of exact example of small town life.
And your parents, I know your dad was originally a cop, but then your mom recruited him to join her private investigative firm, so you had your own Magnum PI in your own home.
So I start with, I grew up in this normal little childhood, but then also my parents were private investigators, which is super not normal. It was definitely an interesting way to grow up.
Yeah, and what did they do? I mean, they were hired by anybody to just find information out about. So, like, maybe there was somebody who a business partner thought was cheating on the business, or they would kind of gather information like that.
It was a lot of cheating, a lot of child custody cases, a lot of fraud. It was kind of all over the map, and it was. I think that they were kind of the go-to company because it was like a female and a male, like husband and wife team. So there was sort of like things my dad was better at, things my mom was better at. And if it had to do with like a female case, my mom was sort of had more finesse in that. And so, I mean, they did that my whole life.
Was it dangerous work? I mean, obviously your dad was a police officer, so he's experienced, but you never know, right? People could just be nuts if they notice that you're like watching them or staking them out.
Well, my dad was narcotics, so he was undercover narcotics up until he became just a PI. So I guess I never really felt there wasn't anything really more dangerous than busting up drug deals in Dallas. So I guess he was sort of set up for that, that life. But it definitely, our normal dinner conversation was not like your everyday average small town dinner conversation. Because, my parents were they were there for us. It's me and my brother. He's 5 years younger. His name is Luke. And he was there, and they were there for us. And, but they were also doing really high profile stakeouts while we were at school. And then they would come home and mom would make us cookies, so they figured out how to do both.
And they had pretty, serious expectations for you, right? Like they were saving money for college. The expectation was you would go to college and get a job and have a sort of a normal, stable life.
Yes. I guess that's every parent sort of puts away money for their kid to go to college and live their dream. And, but I struggled with school my whole life. I just, now looking back, I just learned differently. And I think that's part of the creative brain. Some of us just don't learn the same way everybody else does. And in small town public school, everybody's in one class doing one thing. You know what I mean? And it's there wasn't I feel like now is such a different time. And I love that for kids now, because there's a lot more classes and sort of attention on kids that may learn a different way than other kids. And so I really started to understand in high school, barely passing high school, okay, I'm going to have to figure this out, because I'm just, first of all, not interested in it.
School was not for you.
It was not interesting to me. And I'm all about learning. I still am, but not unless I don't care about the subject.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that was sort of when the conversations had to start happening.
Tell me about music in your house. I know that your dad, he played music. He had a band with a bunch of other cops, I think, right?
He did. My dad is definitely where I sort of learned my music. I mean, he taught me to play guitar. He had a band in his early cop days called Contraband. Pretty clever. And he played guitar and sang my whole life. He's a really great songwriter. So I grew up, half the time I would think like some of the Merle Haggard and John Prine songs he would play, I thought were his when I was little, because he was a songwriter. So he was always playing guitar around the house. And that's kind of what sparked that in me early. Even though I didn't really chase it till my teen years, I just grew up around it.
What kind of music? I mean, you mentioned John Prine and Merle Haggard. What other kind of music were you listening to? Were you hearing in the house as a kid and as a teenager?
Like a lot of different kinds. Like my mom loved Aretha and soul music and a lot of country. But then it was Southern rock, like Creedence Clearwater Revival, David Allan Coe. We would listen to a lot of singer-songwriter. Guy Clark was huge in our house. I think I started early with the singer-songwriter stuff because that's what my dad would play, and that's when I started to, I think I cried for the first time listening to a song at 10 years old. And it was
Do you remember what? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
it was Guy Clark's Desperado's Waiting for a Train. And it's just so sad. And I was like, and I cried. And my dad looked at me like, she gets it, because it was when I understood like what emotion a song can bring out.
Yeah. And what about pop music? I mean, you grew up in the 80s and 90s and that was on the radio, but and you were, Lindale, I think, is about an hour outside of Dallas, right?
Yeah, it's
Hour
about
and a
80
half.
miles. Yeah.
So were you, did you listen to pop music? Were you listening to Mariah Carey or whatever was on in the 90s? I can't remember now,
Yes.
but
I loved Mariah Carey. I was also in the boy band days because I was like a teen or preteen when all that started happening. So I had Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. I had a New Kids on the Block sleeping bag. That was a big deal.
nice.
So there was the pop, but like I always remember, unless I was with like my friends, like my girlfriends at a slumber party, I was always listening to country, either on the radio or like on my dad's record collection. I listened to pop like a kid would at dances and in cars with my friends, but I didn't really, besides Mariah, I didn't really just choose that most of the time.
Who was the first country music singer that you really connected to? You felt like, wow, this person is speaking to me in a different way.
That's a hard question because I guess I have to say Emmylou Harris, really, because it was a female voice and
Yeah.
she just had such an incredible catalog and such an incredible way of delivering a message. And so I think that for when I started to get into like 15, 16, 17, like I really started listening for the girls and like what that meant to me. You know what I mean? And even though I'd heard Emmylou my whole life, I hadn't really heard it like that when you start to get older and like understand the lyric more,
What about Shania Twain?
I loved Shania Twain. I think one of my first like CDs I bought with my own money was Come On Over. And we used to have to go to like the record store and wait in line to buy them back then. And I just was I think that record specifically like had a huge influence on me just because it was so unique and different. And it was so like a girl message with like this crazy pop country production that we had never heard. Like she really was innovative. And that's the first time I really understood what that meant too. Like she's her own brand and she's doing it her own way.
And a Canadian who came to Nashville and made it.
Exactly. And she's an insane work ethic. Like she's still out there crushing it. Like, and it's really cool to see.
Miranda, when you were a teenager, listening to all these different songs, like I imagine you would sing in your bedroom or in the car, or were you that kind of kid? Were you always singing along to the songs?
Yes. I always sang along. My mom says that like when I was 4, I was in the back seat and Meet Me in Montana came on the radio, and I was singing harmony, and she's like, is she singing harmony? My dad's like, surely not. Maybe she just happens to be off key, but singing harmony. And so I think that just was like innately in there, the sing along part. You know what I mean?
You were doing the Marie Osmond part?
Yeah, the Marie Osmond part. I was just thinking, who sings that song? I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention, like, singing along, like all of us girls, like in my like age range, I feel like that was my best friend in my like hairbrush microphone. Celine Dion was our go-to for that. Knowing that we'll never ever hit the notes, but we try anyway.
Did you see her performance at the Olympics?
I missed it. I am also wanting to watch the documentary so bad. I'm way behind on that. I'm definitely, I've never seen her live, and that's on my, like, I'm going. Like, I have to go. Yeah.
I'm gonna make you jealous because I was there. I was at the opening ceremonies.
Oh my God. Was it so emotional?
It's incredible.
Wow.
Anyway.
I can't believe what that would have felt like to be.
It's amazing.
Knowing everything she's been through. Like, that's crazy.
It was incredible. So, I mean, your parents hear you sing the harmony on this song, and your mom's like, she's singing harmony. But do you remember, as a girl or even as a teen, people saying to you, you have something. There's something special about your voice. It's not just a normal singing voice.
Yes. I mean, I sang Daddy's Hands in my, like, I guess I was 10. So, like, my little grade school talent show. My dad played guitar for me. It was a song by Holly Dunn. And I sang it for the little talent show. And, like, there was actually, from where I'm from, there's a lot of, like, huge ministries there. And there was a pretty big Christian singer's family that went to the same school, and him and his wife were at the little talent show, and they were like, these kids are cute and all, but, like, they went to my parents and were like, she's actually, I know she's 10, but, like, she's got tone and, like, she could sing, and I remember my mom talking about that a little bit, but I was really, like, painfully shy when I was little. So, like, also I was 10. Like, what do you do with that? Nothing.
Yeah.
So, but I remember that specifically because, I don't know, it just sticks with you. Also because I struggled at everything else. So that was the first time something was a little bit easier for me.
Did you take classes, singing classes?
I've never really taken singing lessons or anything like that. I just kind of was a kid. Like, I just was a kid. I was a cheerleader. I played volleyball. Like, I sang in the church choir all the time. I sang in the church. We had an actual band at our church. So I started singing in that in 8th grade. So I was always dabbling, but I was also just like a small town East Texas kid that wanted to do kid stuff. And my parents always, like, would get advice from, like, people that were already in the business and random people they would come across in Dallas doing their jobs. And the best advice I think that they got was, like, let her be a kid. Because that time, you don't get that back, So this might be apocryphal, but I think it's probably true, which is the story I've heard is that, you're 16, you really are hating high school. It's just not, you're not connecting with it academically. And you hear about a contest, a music contest, and you decide that you want to enter. Is that what happened? That's what happened.
What was the contest? Yeah.
It was a True Value Country Showdown at this
True Value, like the hardware store.
The hardware store was the sponsor. So it was True Value Country Showdown, and it was at this huge bar in Longview, Texas, which is where I was born. It's like 45 minutes from my hometown. And I was outside, like, working in the yard. My mom, we had a garden and all that. My mom's like, I went inside and because I kind of just acted uninterested. Like, my dad bought me a guitar when I was 14, and I was just like, oh, that's cute. Like, and also at that age, especially teenage girl, you're like, this has to be my idea or I'm not doing any of it. You know what I mean? So, like, they tried to push me to piano lessons. I did take lessons. I still can't play because it wasn't my idea. And, the guitars kind of sat there and I would dabble around. But I think once I started getting in, like, I also got in choir. We didn't have it's a little sidebar, but we didn't have a choir in my high school. And in tiny Texas towns, like, football's everything. And so it's either a cheerleader, you're in the band, you play a sport, and it's football. Like, that's life. Sports are life. And and our band like won all these competitions and they were amazing. And I played saxophone in the band, but like I didn't make cheerleader my sophomore year. I got out of the band because I thought I was going to make cheerleader. I didn't want to do both. And then I was just kind of like, well, what do the rest of us do? Like, I have some musical like inclinations. And so I went to the school board and made a little spreadsheet and some points of like why I thought we needed a choir. And they granted us the money to start a choir for Lindale High School.
Wow.
And the first day, 67 students signed up. So we had like a really huge choir, and we ended up being a badass choir. Like, we won like competitions at state and everything. So they still have a choir to this day, which I'm so thankful that, because that sort of set me like in the singing path. Like, my mom, I remember I was crying because I didn't make cheerleader, and she was like, she was like, I know you don't want to sing, quote unquote, but like, do you really want to be screaming in 30-degree weather? If you might want to sing one day. And I was like, probably not. So choir, I feel like, helped me sort of start moving back into that singing space.
Did it also give you, I mean, did you also have solo? I mean, were you a soloist in the choir at times?
I was. I did solos, and I had like, when they would do the one-on-one competitions, like go in a room with the judge and do like Ave Maria. I mean, I got like a few of the big judges that came in from like other states, and some of the people that were like vocal coaches at UT were like, you're really good, but your accent's very thick. And I was like, I know, but like, we came from East Texas to this competition. What did you think I was going to sound like? And so one of the judges one day, she said, you know what? I think you should keep singing. I don't think you have to keep singing like this, but you need to go and explore your voice because you're good. And that gave me a lot of confidence. Like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to get all the solos and like opera songs in the choir, but that's kind of what started sparking something in me. And so when I heard that ad on the radio for that competition, I was like, I think I want to try this.
So there's a difference, right, between being a soloist in a choir. When you're surrounded by, 20 or 30 people, there's a feeling of security in a sense because you're with these people on stage versus just you alone with a guitar on stage. How was that? How was it for you? Was it terrifying, or was it okay by the time you got to the competition?
You know what? I had a little bit of practice because I played Annie Oakley in the high school play.
Nice.
I know that's shocking. And so that was sort of my intro into like being up there alone. And like I told you earlier, I was really shy. Like, I'm definitely not like that anymore, but I was painfully shy early on. And so, but what's crazy is like, I wasn't that nervous. Like it was just like, I was way more nervous, like serving the volleyball or stepping out for the solo in the opera songs or, being up to bat. I was way more nervous for all that, or the dances and cheerleading, because it took me longer to learn them. Like I finally felt like in my skin, and I was only 16, but I was like, oh, this is the only thing that's ever come somewhat easy to me. You know what I mean? I sang one of my dad's songs, his original songs, and my parents brought 100 people, so I got audience participation that night. Did not win the competition.
Nice. Right, you didn't win, but it gave you this feeling, this energy that you could maybe do this.
Yeah, that was the exact moment where I was like, oh, like and so I got the house gig there. I was only 17, so my mom had to go with me till I turned 18, but I ended up getting the house gig there and played 3 nights a week all through my junior year of high school. Mm-hmm.
This is the Rio Palm Isle?
The Rio Palm Isle. I was like telling my parents, like, I want to chase this. They were like, well, go sing a little and see how you feel. So I printed off a notebook, like, I don't know, a foot thick, like back in the day, like now they use their iPads for like lyrics, but back in the day I printed them all out and laminated them. And I went to this club owner and I was like, I know like 100 songs and y'all need a chick singer and your band's really good and I want to be in it. And he let me. And we played 4-hour sets 3 nights a week all through my like pretty much my whole junior year.
You would just go there on the weekends?
Well, I would get home at like 4 in the morning on Thursdays and still go to school on Fridays.
Wow.
And that didn't help my grade situation either.
I bet it didn't. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I not to jump ahead too much because I want to more things I want to ask you about this time, but you lost the two most significant competitions in your life that would change your life. And I think it's important to kind of just ponder this for a moment, because you would eventually come in third place on Nashville Star, which was a gift, which was actually a gift
It was
because
such a
you didn't
gift.
lock you in later in life.
You're so right. I mean, I think they both were a gift because I learned so much from losing that little True Value Country Showdown. Like, it did not dishearten me. It only fueled my fire, and that's a win because I still have to use that to this day. And then so that loss was first, and then losing Nashville Star, like those contracts can be pretty ugly, like because you have nothing going.
When you win, you have to sign the contract they hand you, basically.
You're like, they get first right to everything and they kind of own you, and you signed it to get on the show because that was the trade-off, So, and the song they had me record for Nashville Star would be my first single, and it wasn't original, and I was already writing a lot, and it wasn't original, and I didn't like it, and I had to record it anyway, and I was like, I don't want this to be the first impression that I put out to the world because it's not really who I am. So getting third, like, got me some time, and it bought me some leeway to like go do me.
We've had Kelly Clarkson on the show, and I think in the first season, and she of course won American Idol.
Yeah.
And has talked a lot about the challenges of that, and how that actually really put her in a difficult position for the first sort of 5 years of her career. You had seen, I mean, I know that you spent sort of the next several years basically playing in bars, right? And actually, let me ask you about that, because I imagine this was really good practice in life in general. You're playing in bars. Some people aren't paying attention. Some people are rowdy. Some people are just, obnoxious. All kinds of things are happening in a bar. And there's this very young woman who's barely 18, 17 years old on stage trying to do her best, trying to entertain you. And you had to deal with all of this.
Yes, and it was the best. I always say I went to Honky Tonk school. That's instead of college, I went to the University of Honky Tonk because that teaches you more than anything. Like, I learned so much about being on stage by jumping up there and not knowing what the hell I was doing. Like, it's like when, I was also like, back in that day, it was like really about dancing. It was about line dancing and waltzes and shuffles. And this club I was working at 17 was like a honky tonk. Like, that's where people went on Thursday, Friday, Saturday to cut loose and cut a rug and have some beers. And I remember they always wanted me to play waltzes, and I only had like 3 in my notebook. And so went home one day and I asked my dad, like, how do you play a waltz? Like, how do you actually play a waltz? Like, teach me, like, on the guitar how I do it. And he did. And I wrote like 3. I was like, well, I'm going to give people what they want. They want a waltz. I'm going to write a waltz. And so I learned, like, just that example. Like, I learned also how, like, to flow. Like, you can't do too many ballads in a row. You can't have your whole set rocking and give nobody an emotional break. Like, I learned all that from the clubs. I mean, that's the best way to get, like, your chops, is just to go do it and know every time you kind of fail, you go, okay, what can I do different?
And how to communicate to an audience. I mean, I read a story about a show that you did recently where there were some people who were just talking, and you basically looked at them and said, hey, if you're here to talk, like, go somewhere else. If you're here to raise hell and listen to great country music and drink beer, here we are, and like everybody cheered.
That is my vibe, because I also feel like, there's a responsibility that I have to really do my job. You came here, and even back in the day, now people pay to come see me, which is a great thing. But back in the day, it was like, I wanted to win. I wanted to win them over. I wanted to send my message out there. I wanted to be heard. Like, I got some cool things to say in my songs and I want you to hear it. So I learned how to do it.
All right. So when you were doing that, when you were playing at Honky Tonk U, right? Did you feel like you were working towards something like, okay, because the path, like we've had Lainey Wilson on the show and we've had, Shania Twain and a bunch of other singer-songwriters who had this path. They'd go to Nashville, right? Like Lainey Wilson went there when she was like 18, unknown, living in a trailer, right? Did you think at the time, okay, I'm going to do this, and then the path is I got to go to Nashville and figure this out?
I love Lainey, by the way. I'm such a fan and she's a friend and I'm just like, love watching her star rise and she's so authentic and that's I just love her. But my journey is different because Texas, I actually listened to Cody Jinks's a piece of y'all's earlier today.
Oh, nice. He's great too.
I feel like Texas has such its own, like we have our own genre of music, Texas music and it has a lot of genres within it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like because of Willie and Waylon and the boys, like we had our own scene. And at that time it was a scene. And for a while it's been a scene of like, you have to pick one or the other, it seems like sometimes. And you're either like red dirt Texas music and you are regionally have a great career, or you go to Nashville and you betray that. And there was this like stigma of like, you can't do both. And it was such a scary thought of like, oh my gosh, like because I was 3 years into the bars because I graduated high school early my senior year. So I could go on the road and like really do it. And I was 3 years into playing these clubs for no money and no people, opening for whoever I could, getting my chops. I made a little independent record. I was trying to sell out of my mom's car. We printed 3,000, and like going to radio stations like Loretta Lynn, like knocking on the door, being like, could I play some songs on the air? So, right. But I was getting some traction. I had like a #1 song on the Texas chart and I was getting some buzz. I was like, okay, well, I could make a career in Texas. Like this is my home state and we have such a huge music scene here. But then what? Like, will I always ask myself, like, what if I could have, because I used to come to Nashville to Fanfare when it was called Fanfare. I'm sure Lainey said the same thing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like every year, just because I was so in love with country music. So I had to kind of make a choice, like, what path am I taking? And will they love me if I do both? Or are they going to turn their backs on me? And luckily for me, Texas is still my favorite place to play because my home state stuck with me. And I also got to go to Nashville and live my country music dream.
I mean, there's a sort of a parallel world where you would have been a Texas country star and that may have been great. But not an international country music star.
Right, exactly. And I didn't love the idea of like picking one or the other. So I was like, maybe I could do both. George Strait did, so maybe I can, and I have, and I'm so thankful for that. And I have a lot of friends there that they didn't get that same opportunity and they have amazing careers, but they also like are glad that window of time is over because a lot of them come to Nashville to write songs. And, I just feel like I want to help bridge the gap of that because it's important because, Willie and Waylon and the boys, how much influence did they have on music as a whole in general? And they started this movement that then went worldwide. And so it can be done.
From what I read, your mom saw Kelly Clarkson win American Idol. It was an iconic kind of season of that show and said, hey, Miranda, you could do this. I think you could. I mean, she's a kid from Texas, but you were not, American Idol you didn't feel like that was the right thing to go for.
No. Also love Kelly. She's so great. She's like, to me, she's one of the best singers of all time. And I'm
She's
so
amazing.
glad.
Amazing.
I'm like, Texas gets a claimer. Yay. No, that was the first year of Idol. And my mom had, was like, hey, so like, would you want to audition? And I was like, no, because it's very pop driven then. it was very pop driven then. There wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of country singers on there, and there wasn't an opportunity to sing original songs. And I was writing a lot of songs, and I was like, that's not the message I want to start with for my career. You know what I mean? I'm not pop, number one. I don't want to be made pop. I don't want to sing other people's songs that don't feel like me. And so I didn't audition for Idol. And as it went on, now there's everything on there. But back then it just felt like not the right thing for me. And, you know, I don't know if that was the right call or not because I still had to grind it out in the bars. But a couple of years later, Nashville Star came along.
So Nashville Star comes along, and I think initially, again, it was your mom who kind of encouraged you to go for it, and you were not super psyched about it, or you weren't like fully, your heart wasn't in it when you first went to audition.
No, because I had done a few more of those little country showdowns. Like I had done a few across the state and didn't win. And I started thinking like, these are rigged and this sucks anyways. Like it's hard, you know, and it's scary and it's like just a couple of people's opinion of if you're good or not. You know what I mean? And so I got a little discouraged by that because I was learning what was good and what wasn't from the stage at that point. Like the crowd told me what was working and what wasn't because they were either in it or they didn't care, you know? So I didn't feel like a judge should judge me at that point. And so I went to Dallas. My mom took me to Dallas and she was like, just try, you know, like I get why, I understand your reasoning. And I did not have my heart in it at all. Like I was half-assing for lack of better words. I just was like not in it. And we got in the car. I didn't even make the top 30 in Dallas. And it was through the local radio station. So there was opportunity to be seen by radio people. And I wasn't in it. And my mom was like, that was embarrassing. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, first of all, your song choice was terrible. Your delivery was terrible. And your outfit was terrible. And your attitude was terrible. I'm like, well, what do you really think, Mom? You know, we're sitting in the parking lot of that audition. And she would not start the car. She was like facing me. Like, you know, when your mom's like giving you the mom talking in church look, you're like, I'm really screwed. And she just said, Miranda, I drove you all the way here. I helped you practice. I helped you get ready for this. We picked out an outfit and you didn't show up and I did. And she said, there's one more audition and it is in Houston and it's in 2 weeks. If you adjust your attitude and we're going, and if nothing happens from that one, I'll give it up forever. And I said, okay. So I adjusted my attitude. I changed my song and my outfit and my attitude. And we went to Houston, which it's 4 hours away. So like my mom's taking time out of her. She's also a working mom. Like she just was kind of like annoyed with the lack of respect I had for her time. So
I love that, by the way. I love your
too.
mom for doing that. I just, as a parent, that's kind of our role. It's to, you know, to believe in your child. And she believed in you. She saw something in you and was pissed off that you were like kind of casting this opportunity aside.
Yes, and I was. And, you know, we'd already had the college conversation. She's like, with whatever I'm seeing here, that's not a conversation because we're supposed to put our college fund money into this attitude. That's not going to work. Like,
right? They'd saved money for college
that they were willing to spend on this. Exactly.
On building your career.
Yes. And so we went to Houston and I showed up. I mean, I had the hair and I had the sequins and I had the outfit. I had the guitar. I was like, all right. And I sang I sang Crazy a cappella by Patsy Cline. Mm-hmm. Then they let me have the second round. I made the second round. So that was already better than what I just dealt with in Dallas. And I sang 2 More Bottles of Wine by Emmylou Harris. And I made it to the third round and we had to do a cover. I don't remember what that was. And I ended up winning for the entire, out of the 200, 300 people in Houston. I won the whole thing and got on Nashville Star that night. Like that was my shoo-in.
And you basically get on a plane to Nashville by yourself. You're 19 to be on national television.
Yeah, for the first time ever. It was my first time on a plane by myself. Like, it was like, my mom's like waving and bawling and Like, it's like dropping your kid off at college. I mean, that's what it
Mm.
was. Like, I was like, here I go. Like, had my little guitar and like all my dorm room stuff because I was like, guess this is what you do if you go to college. We were living in a house in Nashville on Music Row. I'm moving into a home with 12 strangers that are my competitors, and I'm younger than everyone by 10 years.
And they're filming everything.
And they're filming
It's
everything.
like the real world on MTV.
It's exactly how it was, which was the part of it that I was not excited about at all. But I was like, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm going to play bars for $300 forever. Like, you know?
I've seen the video of you performing on that show and the sort of the video they made about your family, and it's so nice, and you're such a nice kid. You're a kid, you're 19, and so just genuine and wide-eyed. And the performance you gave, the one that I saw, you have so much charisma. And I was watching, and I was thinking, she just left Texas. She's 19. She's never been on national television, and you come out there with this charisma and you sing the song. And I mean, was it like an out-of-body experience? Do you remember almost like kind of not even being in your own body? Or
Kinda, yeah. I mean, it was terrifying. And they also decided to put me first on the first episode. Just first out of the gate on the very first episode of a brand new show that's never happened before. And here's this fresh off the farm little gal. And I'm like, you want me to go first? And you know what? But all that bar time, like I just pictured, I was like, nope, you're just at a Honky Tonks. Go up there and do what you do. You can do this. And I mean, that whole time was crazy, but because like it was happening. Like what I had just pictured could happen or might happen or would happen. But this was on such a bigger level because it was television.
But it was like 3 years of grinding it out at bars.
Yeah.
It was real. I mean, there's a lot of work that went into that moment.
Yes.
That was unanticipated. It wasn't like you were planning and plotting it out. Like, okay, and then I'll get to Nashville Star. It was like grind, and then this opportunity came up.
Yeah.
And you were ready.
And I almost blew it the first time. So,
First time.
Yeah. Yeah. I was ready. And, you know, I feel like I'm lucky because I'm just a really strong personality. Like I'm really comfortable and confident in who I am. And so I think that my mom's advice to me, like when I started playing the bars and everything and the competition, she was like, listen, you need to know who you are and you need to stick with it. No matter what people say, no matter what changes in your life, you stick with who you are and be authentic. And my dad's advice was like, character is everything. You show good character, you will get through any situation. And you have good character, you have a strong foundation, go be you. And so I think that's what gave me the like boost I needed to like go on national television and like sing a Hank song. You know, here we are.
You know, some like social scientists should do a study about competitions and award, you know, sort of competitions and look at the winners and then look at the second and third place runner up and third place winner and find out like who actually, what their outcomes were. Because I feel like there's many examples of people coming in second or third who actually, it was a gift, you know, and you didn't win. You were, I think, the youngest by far in that competition, but you came in third. First of all, were you disappointed that you didn't win?
I was not at all because I also loved the winner and he was in it for like 20 years longer than I had been, Buddy Joel. And he had a family and he had been singing demos in Nashville for 20 years and he just deserved it.
He deserved it.
And I just loved him so much. And I was like, here's this little gal over here. I'm like, I didn't do that yet. I didn't pay those kind of dues yet, you know? And so, and I also knew I didn't like the single that I had to cut. I didn't like the contract was not like very artist friendly. And so.
And that contract was only for the first place winner, right?
The contract, yeah. I mean, they had a right to everybody that signed, but you could have a little more negotiation room. But throughout the competition, as I started to keep progressing, because it was weeks and weeks of competition. And as I started to progress, you know, one of the judges was Tracy Gershon, and she worked for Sony Music, and which was the contract for the show, and she just had kind of pulled me to the side and been like, let's go. Like,
Let's talk. Yeah.
yes. And so I kind of knew, like, I think I've gotten the exposure that I was hoping for without the terrible contract attached. And that, so by the last of the competition, I was like, I think I might still have the interest from labels that I was hoping for, because I got in front of some eyeballs I needed. And I had an audience, a way bigger audience, because it was national television. And I'd never had that before. And so knowing that people were actually voting for me and it was resonating was like, okay, I think I got what I came for.
So you signed this recording deal with Sony, but still, I mean, on this show, we talk to people who are known and who have sold music and who have made it, quote unquote, made it. But there are so many incredible artists for a variety of reasons that they sign these deals and that's it. Their career just kind of doesn't go anywhere for a variety of reasons, and often not through fault of their own. Tell me about once that happened, right? Because I think it took about 2 years for your debut album, Kerosene, to come out. Were they trying to? I mean, was it weird, or were they trying to control what you wrote? And I mean, did you feel like they were trying to shape you into something you weren't, or did you feel like you had the freedom to be the artist you wanted to be?
I was really like confident in all the songs that I had piled up that I had been writing. I was confident in, it's also that like 19-year-old fire where you're just like, come out swinging, you got guns drawn, I'm ready, you know what I mean? And so just like, rawr, so excited and just so ready to go. And I feel like I got signed, and I signed the first day that the brand new president had come into Sony. So we signed our contract the same day, and his name was John Grady, and he was a music lover. And that's not always the case, in heads of labels. So I was thankful for that. And I went in there, I took my agent with me, and because I didn't really have a manager at the time or anything. And I just said, look, I so appreciate y'all believing in me. And it was this conference room at Sony. And I'm like in my mama tried tank top and my huge buckle, like just like thinking like I know everything in the world, which I faked it till I made it, I guess. But I was just like, I know what I want to be and who I am. And I know what my sound is supposed to be. Like I innately know it. And I've been working on it for 3 or 4 years. And so if y'all are going to try to like change me or change all my songs or make me some like halter top pop princess, like that's just I'm not interested. And I know that I can go back to Texas and have a career, and I'm fully prepared to do that. But I would like to be here if you're on board with me being me. And John Grady, just like the room was silent, and John Grady looked at me and he said, go make your record, we'll leave you alone. We know, we could see that in your eyes, we trust you. And looking back, like, I mean, that's bold as hell. I don't know what I was thinking. But I also think that showing that amount of like, no, this is what it's got to be, saved me probably a lot of heartache, because it was also a time where there was like a bunch of female artists coming out. A lot of them were blonde from all over, and they were just all starting to like have the same image and look at their headshots all kind of lined up, kind of looked alike. And I was like, I don't want to be I want to be my own lane. I want to be a trailblazer, not just in this like cookie cutter fashion that like maybe fits the trend right now, because that's not longevity. And I knew that back then somehow. I don't know why.
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky that you had that prescience, right? That this idea that I want to have a long career. I mean, because we're not talking, almost 20 years later. And here you are with a new record, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I mean, that album comes out, Kerosene, and it debuts at number 1 on the U.S. country charts. It goes up to number 18 on the U.S. Billboard charts, and is a huge hit. I mean, all of a sudden, overnight. I mean, you got a lot of exposure on Nashville Star, but like you've got this album, and then you go on tour with Keith Urban. At the time, probably one of the 5 biggest country stars in the world.
Yes, big yes. And I was like fresh out of Honky Tonk U right onto Keith Urban stage, and I'm like, oh, this is a whole different ball game. This is this ain't no beer joint band. This is legit musicianship and like entertainment value. And it was arenas. And Keith is so great about that. He's always been so great about, especially with female artists, like really trusting it, taking you under his wing and putting you out there. And also because he's so seasoned, he knows how much we can learn from that. And my band and I sat there every night and watched the show, just every night, like in awe. And that tour also was a whole different level. I was like getting your master's. I was like, okay, this is your next level of schooling. Like, go to school. We need to learn.
What do you remember specifically learning from watching him on stage?
Just we were a good band, but we were a bar band. And there's some beauty to that, but we were now like on a major label with a #1 record, and we needed to step it up and like take it more seriously. And, even like the skill level of my band, like we just needed to work. And I think watching how insanely talented Keith's band was, how smoothly the backstage operated, how the crowd resonated with his banter and his entertainment value, and he'd run around everywhere. It just was really, also the first, like, it was the big stage. And so there was so many notes that I was taking during that tour for sure, because it was the first of many huge tours I would go on.
This is a weird question, and it may be one that you can't answer, but maybe you can. I'm curious, like, how did you learn to go from being this person you are now here, and you're the same person on stage, but you have to be more charismatic. You have to be larger than life on stage. You have to, because you're singing to 20,000 people, 25,000 people. That person in the back row also has to connect to you, and you have to be able to figure out how to do that. Do you have a sense of how you were able to become that?
That's funny you say the back row. I think I was 15, and we went to see George Strait had a stadium run called the Strait Fest, and it was like all the acts I loved, like everybody was on it. We went to Texas Stadium to see it, and we could only afford seats in the back row, like legit head against the stadium wall, like. But I was damn glad to be there. It didn't matter. Yeah. And Martina was on stage, and she's very tiny. Like, she's just
Martina McBride.
Mm-hmm. She's like one of my faves, and she's really hot at that time, like killing it, Broken Wing era. And she's on stage, and my mom's like, and she was just larger than life to me. And seeing her in like interviews and videos and stuff, my mom was like, she's a very small person. She's like your height, and she's small, but look how big she is up there. Be big on stage. Be big. And like, it's such a pageant mom thing to say, but it really stuck with me because I was still like shy, And so I realized, like, I'm only 5'4", a little blonde firecracker. Like, I got to figure out a way to be big up here and like resonate with people. And so I started remembering all the like times I'd seen shows of, people just looking larger than life. And then you meet them at fanfare or in person, and you're like, oh, they're just like normal. But up there, it's like they're like giants, And so I credit my mom for her pageant mom comment.
Yeah. Are there things that you do even now, even being a seasoned performer, to prepare you to get up on stage and to be big? I mean, to take your 5'4" small, frame and to be that person?
I feel like it's sometimes the crowd gets me there. A lot of times. Yeah. I don't know if a lot of entertainers you've talked to say the same thing, but like, you don't do something for 20 years and walk on stage with the same enthusiasm every night for 20 years. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And like walking up there with like the fire that I had on the Keith Urban tour, you know what I mean? But the crowd, like, it's weird. My uncle came to a show last weekend. It was a stadium show with Chris Stapleton, and my uncle came, and he was hanging out with us all night, and he was like, so tell me, how, like, everything. And we were talking, like, I see him all the time, but he was in work environment with me. So it was interesting for him to ask me these questions. But one of them was, how long does it take you to, like, get in? Like, how many songs? It's like he already knew, like, it wasn't song one usually. And I was like, third song. Like, third song, I feel like I'm like, okay, I've looked at everyone. They've looked at me. We're here together. I could take a breath. We get a vibe. And so he actually said after the show, he was like, I saw the shift. I saw the shift in you. And I was like, it's interesting because I was conscious of it at that show specifically. But, you know, the crowd is like, I lean so hard on them. I just am thankful. And like, I might show up with some stuff going on in my life, or might not feel good, or whatever's happening. And about third song in, I'm like, nope, right now is what I'm supposed to be doing right here with all of these people. And
it just hits you.
It hits you.
Yeah. And then it becomes almost like an out of body experience. Like you're like you're at cruising altitude. You just really, the audience is holding you up.
Yes, they are. And even when there's like rough shows or there's a lull, like the way our set is laid out, like it's a ramp up. The whole thing's a ramp up. And so by the end, it's like, you know, and I've also learned to like, it's not their job to entertain me. It's my job to entertain them. Like, do your job. Like if I'm not having the best show or the crowd's not feeling it or whatever it is, it's like, I came here to do a job and I need to do it. And sometimes I start having fun with my band, or we'll joke or laugh, or somebody will hit a wrong note, and it like brings some humor into it, because then it takes the pressure off a little.
Yeah. There's something about charisma. I think we, as humans, we think that you either have it or you don't. And I don't think that's true at all. I think we all have the ability to find it. You know, I was thinking, I had a chance to meet Garth Brooks in person a couple years ago, and he's so nice and so friendly and quiet. And then I saw him perform on stage, and wow, I mean, it was like a completely different human in some ways. You know, it was the same person, but it was also, there was this incredible charisma that came out seeing him.
It is. Well, Garth was my first concert when I was 10. Texas Stadium, night 2. And I agree. Like, it was just the most incredible. He like flew over the crowd and set the stage on fire. And I was like, what's happening? This is amazing. Like, yeah. And I think that's sort of what started my fire about like, oh man, but that was like larger than life, you know? And I'm not like, I've had to learn how to perform. I mean, I still am. Like, I don't think that comes as naturally as like me with my guitar at a honky tonk, you know, like a big stage like that. It's like, all right, you need to step it up. You need to do bigger, be bolder, like, you know, and I'm still learning that to this day. I went from last weekend, I went from Stubbs Barbecue, which holds 120 people, to the stadium, Minute Maid Park with Chris Stapleton in Houston. Wow. And so it was like whiplash, you know. But I just wanted to do that club show for myself because it was a full circle moment for me. But all that to say, I love both, but it's a different brain and it's a different hat to wear.
I want to switch gears for a moment because I want to talk to you a little bit about your new record. But before that, I should mention or confess that I grew up in Los Angeles and I live in San Francisco. So I grew up listening to Depeche Mode, The Smiths, The Cure, no country music at all exposed in my teenage years. Like, it really happened as I became an adult. And I'm embarrassed to say the gateway drug for me into Miranda Lambert was the song Bluebird, actually.
You're new. I don't care how long you've been here. I'm glad you're here.
And which is a song I love. And so I'm picking that song just to use as an example to talk about your approach to songwriting and how you know, sort of how you take what's in your head or what's in your emotional core and put it out into the world. And that song, to me, I mean, it feels very biographical. You know, I'm turning the page. I'm 34, and so I just turned to 35. And I wonder, I mean, in the songs that you write, are you digging into your own experiences and your own emotions and your own feelings and putting them out there for the world?
You know, I think it's since I've been writing songs for so long, I think it's several things. At 17, when I started writing songs, I didn't have like a lot of life under my belt. Obviously, I'm like 17 in this tiny town. Like, so I really pulled from my parents' job, like their stories that I had heard. And we also took in abused women and like women that were victims of domestic violence and
At your house,
and their
right? In
kids
your
into our
home.
home. Yeah.
When you were growing up.
Yeah. From like 14 to 19. And so I saw a lot of real life. Like, even though I was kind of sheltered, I saw a lot of what the ugly parts of the world were, between the cheating cases and the divorce cases with custody battles, and that my parents were working, and then these women that had nowhere to go. It was like really eye-opening. So one of my first songs I wrote was Gunpowder and Lead. So I didn't live that, but I lived in a home where it was so in the forefront, trying to get these women back on their feet and being best friends with their kids and like sharing my room with their daughter, like understanding like what real hard things people were going through. And being a lover of sad songs from day one, I really felt like, okay, I have to dig down deep and find some information that maybe I haven't actually experienced yet for myself. And that really influenced my early songwriting. And then I started living. And like Loretta Lynn said, like, if you don't go live your life, you're not going to have anything to write about. And so I've done it. So a lot of my records, like moving forward from like when I started going on the road and having boyfriends and playing shows all over the country, like I started really writing from my own perspective a lot. And, but I think that's the draw of country music, especially, is like, it's truth. I mean, it's crying in your beer and your dog died and your wife left you, and that's what it is. And so I feel like I always wanted to be a truth teller, a storyteller, but stories that were of the truth, good, bad, and ugly. And, some of that you had to live, which wasn't the fun part.
And because, you're famous, the life you live is public too. People see it, they know it. And so it's different. It's not like being a private person and, having a breakup or having, a challenge in your life. Like it's something people are aware of, which has to make it even more, in some ways, more challenging.
Yeah. And, when it's all out there on display, then it wouldn't make any sense not to just tell the truth in your lyric. You know what I mean? It's kind of like my only chance to tell my real story is through the songs. And I do that still. That's what I signed up for. That's what I vowed when I started this, and to myself and to my fans. Like, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm just going to put it out there. And, there's strength in being vulnerable. And I wanted to be this strong example and this strong woman and this person that you could count on. And so I just went for it. And, I've reached this place now where I don't think you have to write every sad song I don't think you have to live every sad song you ever write.
Yeah.
I think you have had to live some of it to get down in there good. You know what I mean? But I just, I realize now, like, once you've been through certain things in your life and have had loss and pain and all that ugly stuff, it doesn't leave your body. It doesn't leave your heart. You don't have to go bomb your life so you can get a good album. You know what I mean? I'm not about that, but I do think that there is a lot to be said from the mistakes and just the stories that you're creating, or as songwriters we have to use that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed in this conversation is every time I mention one of your colleagues in the business, you're like, I love that person. I love that person. I saw that person. I love that person. And you are known as somebody who really has consciously spent time trying to mentor particularly younger women in this business, which I think is awesome. And not everybody does that. Not because they're mean or unkind, just they don't have time. They don't make time for it. And this is something that, from what I gather, is really important to you. It's like a core part of like how you see your career.
It is. It really is. And I was lucky enough to have some really great guys like that, like Keith and Dirk Bentley and Kenny Chesney and George Strait taking me on the road and really being a friend to me and teaching me the ropes. And I didn't really have a lot of female artists in my life like that because there wasn't a ton of female artists touring when I started, not like on that level. So I really didn't have that. I couldn't just call up somebody at 3 a.m. and go like, what do I do? So I really took that to heart and what the boys did for me. But I also know, like, now I know everything that goes into it for a female artist. And, we have like a lot of extra steps, like in general. Like we have to do the things and the lashes and the the outfits and the hair and makeup and the pressures of weight and all the things that like we all have as performers or as public eye, males, females, whatever. But it's there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And having lived that, I want to make sure I'm there for like my peers and my these younger artists with this fire in their eyes. It also is great to hang around that kind of energy because it reminds me to keep my fire. And like, I also am only 40. Like I did a lot before. I've still got like a whole lot to do. So I want to keep like this young, fun energy around and also be there for them. And, Lainey called me one night and she said, I think it was late. She was like, my song just went #1, my first #1 single. And I was like, duh. Like, I'm not shocked. You're the next big thing in my book. And she's like, I just wanted to talk to somebody who knows exactly how that feels. And, you don't unless you lived it. So the fact that she trusts me with any information at all makes me so happy because I feel like it's a testament to the story that I've lived and the stories that I've created in my lyrics. It's because I did tell the truth about the hard stuff. And I want to be there for these artists for, the highs and the lows because it's lonely sometimes. And you're living in a tin can with people you're not in love with or related to. It's a little bit odd.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your new record. It's like almost full circle, right? Because it's called Postcards from Texas.
Yes.
And obviously where you grew up, we talked about almost 20 years since your first album came out, Kerosene. And you went back home, right? You went back to Texas to kind of not just record it, but also not just write it, but to record it.
Yeah, I did. I had made my little independent album at 18 in Dallas, and I haven't recorded a record in Texas since. And I was in a
This was the album called Miranda Lambert with 10 songs on it that you would sell out of the back of your car, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, just my little podunk CD. But I just felt really strongly about, I don't want to be too Texas on this project. I just wanted to be back to the root of where this all started because I turned 40. It's 20 years later. I got out of my record deal that I've been on the same label for 20 years.
With Sony, yeah.
With Sony. And toward the end, it wasn't a good ending. And I just felt like I really need to go back to really put my feet on the ground. I want to be grounded. I want to be surrounded by something familiar, and all of the art that came from there is what started me on this path. So I want to go back and feel that and be present in it. And I have a house in Austin, and so I was like, I'm grab my bestie from Texas, John Randall, who we were longtime collaborators, and just go see what happens in the studio. And we didn't really have like a real plan, but we were like, let's see what happens. And we used almost all Austin musicians, with the exception of a couple from here that we love. And I really wrote the songs toward like, there's so much nostalgia in all the songs for me because it feels like a piece of all the influences I've ever had. Nashville, Texas, country music as a whole, because it's just tried and true country music. And that's really what started this fire in my belly at 17. And it's what's keeping this fire in my belly at 40. And I just felt really strongly about going back to like the heart of it all, and steel guitar is my heart. It just really is.
And it's, I mean, you're just coming out like come just blazing out of the barn doors with the first single, which I think is Wranglers.
Yeah.
The first line, hell have no fury like a woman scorned.
Yeah.
And the video is terrific. And I've seen you perform Alimony. There's a video of you performing it at a restaurant you own in Nashville.
Yeah. And we're actually, well, I can't tell that yet, so I won't say that. Oops, I almost let a cat out of my bag.
Well, this is not going to air until I think after the record comes out.
Really? But I don't know when that show is. But anyway,
Okay.
Speaking of like having a bar, like it's so fun to have like a country music venue, like
Yeah.
on Broadway. It's like, it's such a big deal to me. I'm the first first female artist to ever have a bar on Broadway. So I've been really so proud of that. And going up there and having tacos and margaritas and watching these young girls jump up and cover my songs. It's like, dang it, this is making it, man. This feels good.
And so, I mean, just kind of going back to the record, is there, I mean, obviously this is an homage to your influences, right? I mean,
It is.
And but is there also, like, thematically, is there kind of so many of your songs are so story driven, like Mama's Broken Heart is so visual. I mean, you don't have to watch the video to imagine the video because the words tell this story. I mean, was this like Barflies and Baptists, and I mean, there's so such great storytelling in that song. Is there sort of an overarching story that comes out of this album?
I think the overarching story is, you know what? I don't know. I think the common thread is the country root of it all, but there's a song for like that's why I called it Postcards from Texas, because I felt like if I was writing a postcard in a nutshell of like each song has its own little, some of it's humorous, some of it's nostalgic, some of it's a warning, some of it's a divorce song. Like, I just feel like there's a little snippet of everything that I've ever like loved or lived is in this record. And, I think it's, besides picking up a armadillo with a doobie, I've done almost everything else on the record. So, I mean, that's yet to come.
Right.
But I just felt like this is little postcards of, also my last record, Palomino, was all about travel. It was, we wrote a lot of it in 2020, and it was like, a bunch of the stories that I had lived or were dreaming about road tripping, because I have an Airstream. Like, I love to just take the Airstream and go for a month. But all that traveling in the last record and all of the changes that happened getting out of the deal and all that stuff, like, kind of led me back home. And so I feel like coming back home after all of that travel, and physically and emotionally, like I think just being back home was the way to start over. Like, I got a whole 2 decades more to go. Like, where are we going? But I need to start here.
By the way, you travel in your Airstream, like when you're not on tour, you just go on road trips?
Last year, well, it's almost been 2 years now. I've never taken a whole month off in the summer before until 2 summers ago. I took a month off. We went in July. We went to my close friend and backup singer, Gwen. She's been with me for 13 years, and they have a camper too. So we went to Montana and Utah, Colorado, Wyoming. It was like
just driving on the interstates.
Because I've been everywhere and seen not much,
Yeah.
Like, and that's part of the road. Like, that's part of what that is. But I realize now, like, I'm trying to do better and like make a trip out of somewhere cool. Like, if we're going somewhere, playing somewhere cool, stay a couple extra days in Tahoe, or we played Switzerland. So my husband and I like stayed over in Europe for a couple of weeks. It's like, you have to live. Like, there's, I've really gotten better about that, but I still have a ways to go. But that's my biggest advice to like 20-year-old artists, or like especially female artists. I'm like, just stop and take a breath for like 1 second. And also take some days off. It's okay. It's just country music,
You, at age 20, you knew that you wanted to have a really long career. And here we are at age 40, and you're still young. I mean, you're at an age where so many artists, actors, musicians that we've had on this show are just starting to really get their traction. You have a long career ahead of you. What do you want to do? What do you imagine, 20 years down the line that you haven't already done or been able to do that you might do?
I'm actually working on that list. Like I've been working on it for like a year and a half, and I don't know exactly what it all looks like, and I don't have a perfect map. I do know that it's about creating. I do know that whatever the next 2 decades of my career / life hold, I want to be a creator, and I want to create music. I want to create crafts, whatever that is. Like, I don't even know yet, but like try things. I want to create an environment and space in my life that is inviting to other people and be a mentor that I feel like I can be by doing what I've done. And I also want to create space for life. Like, that's a big deal, and it's not as easy. I mean, you're a very hard worker. I know that you have a million projects and, but you just create a space in your life for living your life and going to Europe with your family. And, I feel like that's such an important thing, because at some point, all the lights go down, all the buses park for good, people pack up their guitars, and then who are you surrounded by? What do you do now? And I don't ever want to look around and I don't want my legacy to be, well, she was really busy. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean anything. I think the art and the people and the love that you surround yourself with are the most important things.
Miranda Lambert, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching my conversation with Miranda Lambert. Her new record, Postcards from Texas, will be available on September 13th. If you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to this channel. We post new conversations every week. And of course, we are an audio podcast, so you can find The Great Creators wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search The Great Creators. I'm Guy Raz, and you've been watching The Great Creators from Built Up Productions. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Thanks for watching.